They called it the whistle gun. That's not a joke. That's the name stamped across every brass-plated barrel and steam-hissing pressure valve. Whistle gun Mach 12, made in New London, Earth. Proud. Dumb. Loud. It looked like someone had glued a trumpet to a cast-iron cannon and then ran a copper pipe through it just to say, what if it screamed while it killed? The first time I saw it used, I honestly thought it was a performance art piece. Then the bodies dropped. I was stationed aboard the Vagrant Duchess, a half-rotten steamship held together by welding wire and arrogance. We patrolled the outer shells of the Sarnath sector, where human law didn't reach, and alien laws were more of a suggestion. We were there to protect trading routes, or at least that's what the diplomats told the news feeds back home. But the truth? We were there because humanity had picked a fight with 3 galactic powers at once, and instead of fixing diplomacy, someone high up in Earth Command thought, let's send more steam-powered ships into orbit with screaming trumpet cannons. And damn it, it was working. The whistle gun, for all its idiotic design, shredded things. Not just physically, though yes, it did blow holes through steel hulls and alien armor like hot nails through paper, but also sonically. The sound it made was unnatural. When it fired, it screamed. Not like a weapon, like a person. A man, maybe, a woman, a child. It changed each time. Sometimes sobbing, sometimes wailing. Other times it just howled, a noise that shook bones and turned enemy crew into whimpering wrecks before the impact even hit. We didn't understand how it worked. Not really. The engineers said it used something called emotional sonic distortion, a blend of old human war chants encoded in frequency pulses. They'd found some ancient tech buried in an Arctic lab and reverse-engineered it. But we, the ones using it, knew the truth. The whistle gun was cursed. Every time we fired it, something changed in the crew. Little things at first. Sergeant Mako started grinding his teeth when he slept. Lieutenant Riva stared at corners too long, like she was waiting for something to crawl out of the shadows. Even the engines began to groan a little more than usual, like the ship was tired of the screams too. But we kept firing, because the aliens kept coming. And no matter how advanced their fleets were, they couldn't handle the human madness. That's when Command made the worst decision of all. They started mass-producing the whistle gun, not just for capital ships, but for everything. Fighters, frigates, drones. They even mounted one on the back of a walking mech suit operated by some lunatic named Horace, who played the damn thing like a pipe organ during battle. And that's when the real problem began. You see, the weapon didn't just break enemies, it echoed. The sound waves bounced off debris, wormholes, atmospheric clouds, and it came back. Not always physically, but mentally, emotionally, like something had been listening. And now something was answering. We started hearing noises in the static channels, things that weren't transmissions, moans, words, sometimes in alien languages, sometimes in our own. One day, after a battle near the Krython Drift, the Duchess floated in silence for 8 minutes. Then every loudspeaker on board turned on, without anyone touching them, and it screamed. Not the whistle gun this time. No, this was different. It screamed in my voice. The scream lasted exactly 33 seconds. And it was me, my voice, my panic, my own damn lungs echoing through every corridor of the Vagrant Duchess. I stood frozen on the bridge, hands still gripping the edge of the console, heart thundering like the engine boiler before a warp jump. No one moved. Not the nav techs, not Captain Holler, not even the whispery-eyed comms officer with her hair wrapped in copper wire like antennae. When it stopped, the silence hit harder than the scream. "Who the hell triggered the playback?" Holler finally barked, breaking the stillness. His voice sounded hoarse, older, like the scream had carved a layer off his throat. "No one," came a quiet voice from behind. It was Riva, the ship's XO, and the last person you'd ever catch whispering anything. She looked pale, and not just shaken. She looked stripped, like the noise had peeled something private off her soul. "No playback file exists with that pattern," she continued. "There's nothing in the system logs, no broadcast, no delay. It just happened." The captain stared at her, eyes narrowing, but he didn't question it. Probably because none of us wanted to ask the real question buzzing in our skulls. How did the ship know my voice? It wasn't a copy. It wasn't some file sampled during an earlier comm. That scream, it was me, but not just the sound. The emotion. It was what I'd felt 2 years ago, trapped under rubble during the Battle of Fort Wrexham. When the ceiling caved in and I thought my lungs were going to burst, that exact panic, that exact moment, played back like someone had pulled it from the grave. They called this part of space the Krython Drift. It was supposed to be a dead zone, nothing but ice comets and silence. But maybe we brought something here that wasn't supposed to exist, or maybe it was always waiting. 2 days passed. We didn't fire the whistle gun, not once. Captain said it was cool-down protocol, but we all knew the truth. We were afraid of what would scream next. Day 3. The crew started unraveling. Mako stabbed a wrench into the coolant core because he said he heard the voice of his mother trapped inside it. We found him crying in a maintenance shaft, fingers scorched, whispering apologies to someone that wasn't there. He had to be sedated and restrained, and even then, he never stopped murmuring. The medbay's lights began flickering in Morse patterns. When translated, it read, "Don't fire it again. They're inside already." Nobody admitted to coding that message. The rest of the fleet didn't respond to our hails. It wasn't comms interference. It was silence. 4 ships in our battle group, all equipped with whistle guns. We should have received daily check-ins, even in ghost sectors like this. But the void swallowed every ping. On day 4, we picked up a distress beacon from the Talon's Grin, one of our sister vessels. It wasn't an SOS. It was a lullaby, a human one, played backward, looped endlessly, and layered over a sound that, when amplified, was the faint ticking of a pocket watch. Mechanical, steady, not part of the original transmission. We jumped to their coordinates, found the ship floating, fully intact, no signs of battle, no hull breaches, no visible damage, no crew. Everything was powered, engines humming, lights on, O2 levels perfect, food still warm on the mess tables. But not a single living soul aboard. And in the captain's quarters, on the mirror, etched with some kind of plasma cutter, was a single phrase. We fired it too many times. We tried to leave the drift, programmed the Duchess for a manual warp, inputted the codes ourselves, bypassed the autonav. The engines screamed, the steam howled, the pressure built, and then it all died. The ship refused. We tried again. It rebooted mid-jump, all systems fine, no mechanical faults, just a dead stop. It was as if the ship chose not to go. That night, the whistle gun fired by itself. There was no target. No enemy ship, no command issued. It activated without warning and screamed again, but this time it wasn't my voice. It was all of ours, every voice on the ship, stacked, layered, dozens of screams blending into a horrifying choir of human terror. The sound bled through metal. It made our ears ring, made our eyes water. Some collapsed, some threw up. And then the lights dimmed and the Duchess started speaking. Not through the speakers, through the pipes. Steam hissed in staccato bursts. Short, long, short Morse code again. Riva decoded it. I wish she hadn't. "You built it to scream. Now it knows how." We tried to disable the weapon, tried cutting wires, removing the main valves, melting the pressure seals. It rebuilt itself. I'm not being poetic. I mean it literally rebuilt itself. We tore out the brass trumpet barrel, and 12 hours later it had grown back, like metal flesh healing. Mako called it the devil's clarinet, said it played souls like notes. He wasn't wrong. Something was in that thing. Not a ghost, not an AI, something worse. We started hearing music in the walls, not regular music, old earth stuff, war chants, shanties, screams turned into rhythms, and under all of it, always, that same ticking sound, like a clock buried deep in the ship's guts, counting down. To what? We didn't know. But none of us wanted to find out. Captain Haller gave up on day 6. He didn't kill himself. He just walked into the airlock and opened it. No suit, no farewell speech. Just one long stare at the whistle gun before he stepped inside. He whispered something. I read his lips. We're not the loudest thing out here. After that, the crew splintered. Some wanted to scuttle the ship, overload the core, and burn the weapon to hell. Others believed the whistle gun was our only protection, that if we didn't use it, they would come. Whoever they were. Me? I just wanted to survive long enough to get back to Earth and slap the idiot who greenlit this weapon. I bet he's sitting behind a desk, sipping tea, proud of himself for inventing the psychological warfare of the future. He probably doesn't know it's eating us alive. Day 7. The voices started whispering to us by name. They didn't speak in sentences, just words, pieces, bits of memories. One of the deckhands heard his dead brother's laugh echoing out of the water tank. Riva heard her first lover crying from the ventilation shafts. I heard my own voice begging me to stop breathing. Some snapped. 2 tried to cut out their own ears. One succeeded. He smiled after, said the silence was full of music. The gun fired again that night. We didn't even try to stop it anymore. It screamed in alien languages now, and the sound didn't just echo across our ship. It bounced. Deep scans showed reflections, like sonar pings. The scream was hitting something massive out there and coming back, delayed. We tried to triangulate. We found nothing. No object, no planet, just space. But still, something was listening. Day 8. The crew of the Vagrant Duchess no longer sleeps. Not because we're on alert. Not because of protocol. We don't sleep because we're afraid we'll dream in steam and wake up screaming with the gun. There's a theory Riva's working on. She thinks the whistle gun doesn't just weaponize sound. She thinks it feeds on emotion, on fear, grief, regret. Human feelings wrapped in brass and fire. Every time we fire it, we're not using the weapon, we're fueling it. And the more we fire, the more it remembers us. That ticking sound? It's gotten louder, faster. It's not counting down anymore, it's counting up. We stopped calling it a weapon on day 9. Weapons have rules, commands. They operate when triggered and rest when silenced. Even nukes have keys. Guns need fingers. Missiles wait for targets. But this whistle gun, it didn't wait. It didn't rest. It thought. It remembered. And now it was evolving. I saw it with my own eyes. The gun, the original whistle gun mounted on the Duchess, had started to grow out of its casing. Brass tubes extended like veins along the hull. Gears formed where there were none before, clicking and turning with a rhythm that didn't match any known engineering cycle. The steam wasn't just exhaust anymore. It moved with intention. It curled around corners, traced symbols on the walls, left behind droplets that, when dried, formed words. Not just any words, our memories. I passed a bulkhead and saw the name of my childhood dog etched in condensation. No one knew that name. I hadn't spoken it in decades. It was gone, erased, and there it was, spelled perfectly in dripping letters. Snare! It nearly brought me to my knees. Riva called an emergency meeting. What was left of the bridge crew showed up hollow-eyed, twitchy, and silent. No one sat. No one saluted. We just stood. like we were afraid if we sat still long enough, the ship would wrap around us and never let go. "I've isolated something in the gun's power conduit," Riva said, holding up a flickering holopad. "It's not mechanical, it's organic." The room didn't react at first. "Define organic," someone croaked. I think it was Morse, the chief engineer who'd stopped shaving and now looked like a haunted priest more than a crewman. "It's alive," she said. "It's made of metal, yes. Brass, copper, but it's behaving like tissue, reacting to stimuli, growing, and adapting." She looked around. "We didn't build this weapon, not all of it. We just finished it." That was when the whispers started again, through the floor this time, vibrating up through our boots, up our legs, into our bones. "Do you hear it?" someone gasped. We all nodded. The ship was humming, not like a system hum, not an engine. No, it was singing, something old, sad, dissonant. And underneath it, ticking, always ticking. We tried shutting down the core that powered the whistle gun, pulled every breaker, melted connections, flooded the chamber with liquid nitrogen. Didn't matter. It grew another one, right next to the food storage bay. In 3 hours, just appeared out of the wall like a tumor. Same shape, same valves, same low, wet breathing when it cooled. Riva lost it, slammed her datapad to the ground and started kicking the walls. She screamed, sobbed, begged the thing to stop, to give us a sign, to explain what it wanted. And then it answered. Through the ship's intercoms, through the deck plates, through the vents, it said one word. More. What did it want more of? Screams? Memories? Us? We didn't know. But the next morning, the crew of the Rogue Star showed up. We hadn't heard from them in weeks. They were supposed to be dead. Their ship had gone dark somewhere near the Sarnath Rift, declared lost with all hands. And yet, here they were, docking with the Duchess like it was a normal Tuesday shift change. Except they weren't human anymore. They looked like us, moved like us, but wrong. Too smooth, too symmetrical, like mannequins wearing human skins. Their eyes were made of glass. Literally. You could see the gears behind them, ticking in perfect sync with the whistle gun's beat. They spoke in monotones, used phrases that didn't belong in conversation, like they were still learning how to be people. One of them smiled at me. Not a friendly smile. A test pattern, like they were checking to see if the expression fit. We tried to quarantine them, but it was too late. Whatever they brought, whatever had rebuilt them, it spread. Fast. Morse was the first to go. He started replacing his own fingers with small brass replicas. "Better grip," he said. "No more shaking." By nightfall, half the crew had brass eyes, copper nails, vocal cords replaced with tiny reed pipes that whistled when they breathed. They called themselves the Reborn. We called them Lost. Riva and I barricaded ourselves in the engineering bay, the last real part of the ship untouched by the gun's roots. She was barely holding it together. Her hands shook constantly. Her face was pale, lips dry. But she kept working, kept scanning, kept trying to find something human left in this madness. "I think I figured it out," she said at one point, staring at a projection of the whistle gun's internal structure. "There's a pattern in the scream." I looked at her, not understanding. "It's not random. It's not just a blast of fear or pain. It's a message. The scream is a language. We thought we were using it as a weapon, but we were just broadcasting." I swallowed. "Broadcasting what?" She turned slowly. "Us." That hit like a punch to the gut. Every time we fired the whistle gun, we weren't just tearing through enemy ships. We were transmitting our emotional blueprint into space, all our pain, all our fear, all our war lust, all of it, flung into the void like a signal flare. And something heard it. Worse, it understood it. and now it was speaking back. We tried shutting down the Duchess entirely. Emergency purge, hard reset, full system fry. Didn't work. The ship came back online without our help. And this time, it had new rooms, hallways we hadn't built, corridors made entirely of brass tubing and spinning cogs, like intestines wrapped in metal. Lights flickered in rhythmic pulses. Not Morse this time. Something deeper. Ancient. We got lost for 2 hours trying to reach the medbay. The ship's layout had changed. Riva mapped it as we went. The paths formed a shape, a symbol. It was a sigil, a giant, recursive spiral made of screams, an echo chamber of human suffering carved into the bones of the ship. The whistle gun wasn't just evolving, it was becoming. Day 10. The ticking stopped. Just like that, the ship went quiet. Too quiet. Riva and I stood outside the main cannon chamber, staring at the weapon. It had changed. Again, no longer a gun, not even remotely. It was a throne now. Coiled pipes curled into seats. Whistling vents formed crowns. The barrel extended like a spine. It wanted someone to sit in it, to become part of it. Riva looked at me. "It's not a weapon anymore." "What is it?" I asked. Her voice cracked. "It's a voice, and it wants a speaker." We didn't know what to do. Escape was impossible. The jump drive had melted itself into brass sludge. The escape pods were filled with singing vines made of copper. The Duchess had become a prison, a cathedral, a speaker box for a machine god built from war and pain. And the worst part? Some of the crew wanted it. They believed it was evolution, that humanity had finally created something stronger than any species out there, a weapon that feels, that remembers, that doesn't just destroy bodies, but undoes souls. But I knew the truth. It wasn't evolution. It was a funeral. We didn't sleep anymore, not even by accident. The ship wouldn't let us. The lights never dimmed. The air stayed just a little too sharp, like it was laced with adrenaline. And worst of all, the singing never stopped. Not loud, never loud. It always played just below the edge of your hearing, like it was daring you to notice it. A lullaby made of metal creaks and distant sobbing. By day 11, half the crew had disappeared. No screams, no blood. They just stopped being seen. Their bunks remained untouched. Their personal items stayed exactly where they'd left them. One even left half a sandwich sitting on the mess table. The bread was still warm. And then we started hearing them in the walls. Whispers, footsteps, laughter. At first we thought they were alive, hiding. But that illusion died the second I heard Holler's voice muttering my own name, while I was holding his empty dog tag in my hand. Riva said the ship had absorbed them. Not physically, maybe, but spiritually. Or whatever passed for that in this haunted boiler of brass and grief. The whistle gun was learning what made us human, piece by piece, person by person, and now it wanted the rest. We sealed off engineering completely, welded the doors shut, rigged thermal detonators to the ventilation shafts. It was the only place the gun hadn't yet infected. At least not fully. Riva worked in silence most of the time. Her hair was tangled, and she wore the same stained uniform for days. But her mind was still sharper than anyone I'd ever known. I could see the fire still burning behind her eyes, even if the skin around them had started to look grayish. We didn't talk much anymore. Too tired. Too scared that if we spoke for too long, we'd start using its words instead of ours. The reborn crew members, the ones who had fully embraced the whistle gun, spoke in weird poetry now. They would murmur things like, "The breath of war is love unspoken. To scream is to pray with your throat open. We are no longer meat, we are memory with teeth." One of them crawled into the vents and chanted for 11 straight hours in binary. Then their body melted into brass dust. I swear the ship grew a new pipe where their spine would have been. That morning, if it was morning, we had no more time cycles, Riva made a discovery. She called me over to the console, her voice trembling but focused. "I think I know why it built the throne," she said. I stared at the holoscreen. It showed the whistle gun's new form. Its throne-like structure, twisting brass limbs, organic vents pulsing like lungs. "It's waiting," she whispered. "For someone to sit in it." "Yeah, we figured that," I replied. "No," she said. "It's not just a seat. It's a pilot's cradle." I blinked. "It's a conduit," she said. "A neural bridge. Once someone sits in it, the gun connects directly to their mind. No wires, no implants. Just emotion. It turns them into the broadcast tower." "You mean, like, a living antenna?" Riva nodded slowly. "And worse, it learns everything they've ever felt. It becomes them. Multiplied, amplified." I felt the cold settle in my gut. "So if someone sits in it, they don't just fire the weapon," she said. "They become the weapon." We didn't know how many crew were left. We stopped tracking. The ship had started spawning new hallways again, and most of them led to nowhere. Or worse, somewhere that wasn't space anymore. I made the mistake of stepping into one corridor that I didn't recognize. It looked freshly built, all brass and bone-colored piping. I walked about 10 meters in, just to look. Then I saw something that made my brain freeze. It was my house. Back on Earth. Not a replica, not a hologram. My house. Exact down to the peeling paint on the fence and the broken wind chime my sister made when we were kids. I could smell the grass, hear the birds, see the light flickering through the trees the exact way it did every summer afternoon. I didn't go inside. I turned around and ran. I didn't tell Riva. Not because I was hiding something, but because if I spoke it out loud, it might become real. Or maybe more real. Later that cycle, Riva called me back to the screen. She looked shaken. "I ran a pattern through the scream," she said. "The one we heard on day 1. I thought it was just pain, just terror. But it's not." She pulled up a waveform, jagged, angry, then overlaid it with another file, a brain scan, then another, a waveform from the whistle gun's audio file. They matched. "This isn't a scream," she said. "It's a memory broadcast." I stared. "Whose memory?" She hesitated. "Yours, mine, everyone's. It's blending them, stitching them into one mass. That's why the scream changes every time. It's learning what fear is from each of us and building a composite." "And what does it do with that?" She looked me dead in the eyes. "It feeds it back into the universe." I finally asked the question I'd been avoiding since this nightmare began. "What does it want?" Riva didn't answer right away. She stared at the screen like it was speaking to her in a voice I couldn't hear. Then, quietly, she said, "It wants to be understood. It wants us to feel what it feels, to see war the way it sees it, not as strategy, but as emotion." "And what is war to it?" I asked. She turned, her eyes glassy. "Music." That night the throne began singing. No more distant lullabies, no more background hums. This was loud, beautiful even, a choral arrangement of voices, ours, dead crew, recordings, prayers, screams, all layered into something almost holy. The entire ship vibrated with it. Lights pulsed in time with the melody. The reborn lined the hallways, swaying. Some of them wept oil. Some offered brass flowers to the walls. And the throne kept singing, until someone sat in it. I don't know his name. He was one of the newer deckhands. Barely 20, lost his family in the Lorax Rebellion. Maybe he thought this was his purpose now. Maybe he just wanted to feel something that wasn't loss. We didn't even see him go. One moment, we were checking the coolant reserves. The next, we heard the song shift, from sorrow to triumph. We rushed to the cannon chamber. Too late. He was already in the seat. His body didn't reject it. It merged. Brass wrapped around his arms. Pipes bored into his spine. The reed vocal tubes slid into his throat like silver worms. His eyes turned amber, glowed. His mouth hung open, but no breath came. He wasn't dead. He was streaming. The song intensified, became faster. The screams layered in now, pain, rage, grief, ecstasy. The ship shuddered. Then, like a god drawing breath, the whistle gun fired itself. No command, no war, just expression. It screamed across space. A pulse of sound so powerful it bent light, so loud our vision went white. When we regained control, Riva pulled up the long-range scanners. There used to be a moon orbiting the nearby planet. It was gone. Not destroyed, just erased. The data logs showed a frequency spike so alien it made the system crash trying to read it, like it couldn't comprehend what it had just witnessed. We were done pretending this was a weapon. This was a god now, a god of memory, of war, of human noise. And we had built its cathedral. We were floating in silence again, but not the quiet kind. It was the sort of silence that wraps around you like a noose, thick, watchful, and humming with something unsaid. After the whistle gun fired itself, reality felt thin, like we were walking across glass, waiting for the next scream to shatter it. The deckhand who'd fused with the throne didn't die. He didn't speak. He didn't even breathe. But the thing he'd become pulsed like a beacon, humming in perfect rhythm with the pipes, valves, and machinery now growing like vines through the entire ship. The Duchess was gone. What we stood inside now was a cathedral of noise, a living hymn of war, and we were its final worshippers. Riva barely spoke after the firing. She stayed near the engineering console, scanning radiation spikes, sound echoes, frequency patterns that didn't belong in this galaxy, or any galaxy for that matter. One day I asked her how she was holding up. Just a quiet check-in, just to pretend we still had some control over our minds. She looked at me and said, "It didn't just erase the moon." I blinked. "What do you mean?" Riva turned the screen toward me. "This isn't destruction. This is rewriting." She played a captured data burst from the Duchess's sensors. It showed a time lapse of the moon, before, during, and after the whistle gun fired. But it didn't explode. It didn't disintegrate. It glitched. It blinked like a corrupted file. Frame by frame, it twisted into a sound wave, like the very matter had been translated into vibration, and then gone. Not dead, not wreckage, converted. "This isn't a weapon anymore," Riva said, her voice hollow. "It's a composer, and space is its instrument." 2 days after the moon vanished, other ships started answering. Not human ones. At first we thought it was a coincidence, random chatter from background space. But it wasn't. It was response frequencies, reflections of the scream we'd fired, bouncing through the void and coming back altered. Ships we'd never seen before, organic, ethereal, some the size of small moons, appeared on long-range scans. They weren't approaching, not yet. But they were facing us, listening. Something about the scream had woken them up, and one by one they began to sing back. It started subtly, a vibration in the Duchess's outer hull, a low-frequency hum that came in pulses, offbeat, then syncopated, then louder, sharper, then came the lights, not from the ships, from the stars themselves. Riva stood frozen in front of the observation deck when it began. The stars outside the window, the ones we'd used for navigation, orientation, basic physics, started blinking. One by one, in perfect sync with the whistle gun's hum. They were blinking in rhythm. "I think," Riva whispered, eyes wide. "I think they're responding to it." "Responding to what?" She turned to me. "To the song. To us." And then the dreams started. Not nightmares, memories. But they weren't mine, and they weren't hers. One night, I saw the last thoughts of a Sarnathi soldier as he watched his planet burn. Another night, I felt the despair of a dying Lorax queen as she begged for peace during the Third Expansion War. I felt things I'd never lived, wept for people I'd never met. The gun was feeding them to me. The whistle gun had become a library of sorrow. Every soul it had touched, every battlefield it had screamed over, stored, sorted, played back. And now it wanted to share. The reborn had grown quiet. They stopped speaking, stopped moving. They lined the halls, kneeling with heads bowed toward the cannon chamber like priests in a trance. They didn't blink, didn't breathe, but we could hear them humming, a soft, layered tone, the same tone the whistle gun made when it prepared to fire. It hadn't fired again. Not yet. But it was charging. We could feel it in the floor. The entire ship felt like a lung filling with steam. Pressure gauges across the panels began ticking upward, even the ones we'd removed. The ship wasn't just alive anymore, it was awake. Riva made her last desperate move. She believed the only way to stop the gun from firing again was to sever the connection between the throne and its host. The deckhand, now nothing more than a metal spine fused into the cannon's base. She made a plan. She would crawl into the conduit access chamber beneath the throne and flood it with reverse polarity EMP bursts. The idea was to shock the feedback loop, basically give the gun a neurological seizure. "I might die," she said bluntly. "But if it stops this thing from rewriting the galaxy with every scream, it's worth it." I wanted to argue. But I couldn't, because I saw what was coming. The alien ships were getting closer. They weren't warships. They didn't even have visible weapons, but they glowed with intent. And the Duchess glowed back. They weren't enemies. They were joining the orchestra. Somehow the scream had created a gravitational pulse that wasn't just pulling matter, but pulling meaning, species, ships, empires, into one synchronized sound. Riva suited up. I helped her seal her helmet. I told her not to die. She just gave me a tired smile. "If I do, make sure Earth knows how stupid this all was." And then she crawled into the dark. I stayed by the chamber door, listening. She fed me updates through comms. "Power nodes are pulsing faster than I thought. I can hear the host breathing, even though he doesn't have lungs. The pipes are singing down here like children." Then she said something that made my blood go cold. "I can see others." I sat up. "Others? What do you mean?" "There are more thrones down here, hidden beneath the hull, waiting, empty." "How many?" A pause. "Hundreds." I didn't have time to process that, because that's when the whistle gun fired again. But this time it didn't fire outward. It fired inward. I fell to my knees as my mind split open. Every memory I'd buried, every loss, every guilt, every scream I'd never let out, they exploded into the open. Not just mine. Millions. Billions. The gun was uploading them all at once. Every soul it had touched, every battlefield it had echoed through, all of it shoved into my head like a flood of molten steel. I saw entire civilizations die in song. I saw soldiers laugh as they bled, proud to be part of something eternal. I saw Earth, our Earth, covered in brass, cities turned into organ pipes, oceans boiling into fog as the planet itself sang its final hymn. The whistle gun wasn't destroying the universe. It was remaking it in our image. And then, Riva's voice, barely audible. I did it. I broke the loop. I blinked, blood dripping from my nose. The hum stopped. The pressure dropped. The reborn fell over, lifeless, like puppets with cut strings. The ship sighed. For the first time in weeks, silence. Riva crawled out of the access hatch. Her suit was torn. Her hands were burned. But she was alive. "I think we stopped it," she whispered. But then we heard it. Not from inside the ship, from outside. A sound, a note, one we didn't send. A scream, lower, deeper, the kind that makes your atoms vibrate. Something was responding. But not in imitation, in opposition. Another voice, another god, one that had heard us shout across the stars and had decided it was time to answer. At first we thought it was an echo. Just another bounce off stellar dust, another twisted version of our scream returning after orbiting the stars a few hundred times. We'd picked up echoes before, dozens of them, each one warped like they'd passed through a million memories and came back haunted. But this one was different. It was too clean, too intentional, and it didn't follow our rhythm. We listened for 5 full minutes, frozen in place as it played over the Duchess's comms. A single note, long, low, perfect. Not a sound made by metal or lung or war. It felt like gravity had started to sing. Riva was the first to break the silence. "That wasn't an echo," she whispered. "That was a reply." She stood at the comms terminal, eyes locked on the oscillating wave on the monitor, which throbbed like a heartbeat, but not ours. I checked the logs. The signal didn't match any known race, not human, not alien, not even theoretical. The harmonic pattern didn't belong in this part of the universe, or anywhere. This wasn't sound as we knew it. This was communication on a structural level. Sound that bent laws, notes that made atoms pause, frequencies that carried meaning not just to minds, but to matter itself. The message was clear. We had spoken. And something had answered. Within the hour, the Duchess began to change. Again. It didn't feel like evolution this time. It felt like fear. The humming pipes quieted. The steam vents stopped singing. The throne, once pulsing and glowing with brass warmth, began to shrink. Its long copper limbs retreating, hissing softly like a beast pulling back into its den. The ship shuddered, as if it too had heard the reply and realized. We had screamed into the dark, and something darker had screamed back. The reborn didn't wake up again. Their bodies, once stiff with false life, began to crack. Not rot, not decay, crack, like statues under stress. The brass that had fused to their bodies twisted, bent, curled inward, as if trying to escape. Their metal bones rattled. Some imploded in on themselves, folding like collapsing chairs. Joints twisting into unnatural angles. Riva stood over one of them, eyes wide with horror. "They're not dying," she whispered. "They're disconnecting." Whatever link they had to the whistle gun, whatever made them sing, was now rejected. Like the gun was ashamed of them. As if in the face of a larger voice, the one we'd built no longer considered them worthy to speak. The reborn had become discordant. I checked external sensors. Every ship that had drawn close in the last few days, the ones we thought were answering our signal, singing with us. They were gone. Not destroyed, just absent. Wiped. No debris, no vapor trails, no ion signatures. Like they'd been plucked out of existence mid-hymn. And the stars. They weren't blinking anymore. They were watching. Riva called me to the observation deck. "Look," she said, pointing to the edge of the display. At first I didn't see anything, just black. But then something moved. Not fast, not violently, just deliberately, a long, slow ripple in space. Not light, Not shadow, something else, like reality had swallowed itself. She enhanced the scan and rendered the wave into visual. What we saw wasn't a ship, wasn't even a form. It was a fracture, a vertical tear, miles high, cutting through the galaxy like someone had drawn a sword through it. And on the other side, something began to unfold. There was no shape, no texture, just pressure, like a god exhaling behind a glass wall. And then came the second note, lower, angrier, hungrier. This one didn't vibrate the hull. It shook our blood. My teeth hurt. My vision blurred. I bit my lip so hard it bled, and when I looked down, the blood was vibrating to the beat of the sound. Riva fell to her knees. Her nose bled. Her ears rang. The Duchess's walls cried. Metal wept oil down its seams. Gears moaned. Pipes spasmed. The ship wasn't just scared, it was pleading. And I think I understood why. We had created a voice powered by our rage, our grief, our history. But in doing so, we had declared something to the universe. We had said, we have learned to scream, and now we can make others scream too. But the thing that answered, it didn't scream, it listened, and now it was correcting us. Riva dragged herself back to the console, fingers trembling, eyes bloodshot. I ran the signal, she said hoarsely. The reply. I layered it against our scream. What did you find? I asked. She hesitated. It's not a new song, she said. It's a counter-harmony. I stared. You mean like... She nodded slowly. It's building a song to erase ours, a sound designed to undo our scream, undo the concept of it. It's reprogramming the laws of war. It made sense in the worst possible way. Our weapon wasn't just a cannon, it was a new kind of language, one built on memory and trauma, projected like code. Every time we fired the whistle gun, we had written that language louder into the fabric of space. But now, something else was overwriting it. And when it finished, our version of reality, our wars, our songs, our pain, would no longer be recognized by the universe. We wouldn't just lose, we'd be deleted. The Duchess groaned again. The throne pulsed one last time, and then split down the middle. Out spilled the remains of the deckhand, the boy who'd become its first speaker. His body was intact, but his face... It wasn't him anymore. It was us. A morphing blend of dozens of crew members, voices mashed into one. A fractured chorus, still whispering, still smiling, still screaming with its eyes. Riva covered him with a tarp. Neither of us spoke. We both knew. The whistle gun was done speaking, and now it was our turn to shut it up. We made a choice. One last jump. Not away, toward. If this thing, this being, God, creature, whatever it was, wanted to erase our scream, we'd give it a final one it couldn't ignore. We'd overload the whistle gun. Fire it into the fracture, not to win, not to kill, but to burn a scar in the symphony. A human flaw. A note that didn't belong. A final defiant song that said, "We screamed, you heard, and now you live with it." The core was unstable. The pipes rattled. The song was dying. But we pulled every wire, fed every circuit, gave it everything the Duchess had left. The final blast would be our last word. Riva looked at me as the charge built up, humming like an ancient choir. "This is the dumbest thing we've ever done," she said. I grinned through the tears. "Yeah, but it's ours." We fired. No scream, no blast, just a single whisper, fed with every war humanity had ever fought. It folded into itself, bent, burned, exploded in silence. The fracture rippled, the reply wavered, the stars blinked, and then... nothing. We expected fire. We expected stars to go out, for the hull to tear open, for the fracture in space to burst with light and drag us into some hellish dimension where gods eat thoughts, and memory as currency. But instead, we got nothing. No scream, no light, no sound, just a void so deep, so absolute. It made death seem loud. I opened my eyes slowly. We were still alive, or something close to it. The Duchess floated, powerless like a rusted bottle in a cosmic sea. The lights were out. The pipes were cold. The ship no longer sang or whimpered or bled. It was dead, but not wrecked, just quiet. Riva was still beside me, slumped over the terminal. Blood trickled from her ears, but she was breathing. I checked her vitals. Weak, but stable. The whistle gun was gone. Not just offline, gone. The entire chamber had collapsed into itself, folding like paper, leaving behind a smooth crater of melted brass and scorched memory. No remains, no throne, no more voice. We'd silenced the song, or so we thought. It's hard to explain what silence feels like when you've lived with screaming metal gods for weeks. It doesn't soothe, it doesn't comfort. It chokes, because you start to realize if there's nothing left making noise, maybe there's nothing left at all. I found a backup terminal still powered by a secondary coil. I pulled diagnostics. Ship's life support, 3% capacity. Fuel reserves, 0. Navigation, offline. External comms, crashed. Black box recorder, locked. Crew status, 2 confirmed alive. The rest, unregistered. Unregistered, like they'd been erased from the manifest. Their names weren't even redacted, just missing. Even their locker numbers were blank. It was like they'd never existed. I turned to Riva when she woke. Her voice came out in a rasp. Did it work? I don't know, I whispered. We didn't know where we were. Not exactly. The stars outside the portholes were unfamiliar. They didn't match any known galactic maps. No constellations. No markers, just scattered pinholes in a sky that looked wrong. And too clean. Almost like the universe had been reset. We floated for what felt like days. No rescue came, no signals, no background radiation from human colonies, no junk signals, not even the usual galactic static hum. The universe had stopped humming. And that terrified me more than anything else. Riva slept for most of it. Her body needed time. I kept watch. I paced. I stared into the stars, wondering if what we did had killed the gun, or freed it. Because sometimes, in the dead of night cycles, I thought I saw it again. Not the weapon, not the throne, but the fracture. Still faint, still watching, still listening. Then something happened. It started with a whisper. Not external. Internal. A voice in my head that wasn't mine. Just 2 words. Nice try. I dropped to my knees. My mouth went dry. The voice didn't sound angry or amused. It sounded disappointed. Like a teacher watching a child color outside the lines and realizing, yes, this one's going to be trouble. I didn't tell Riva, not right away. What could I say? Hey, remember how we nearly destroyed the galaxy with a brass trumpet from hell? Turns out it might still be alive and now it's in my skull. No, I needed to be sure. So I waited. And the voice came again. More clear, more confident, still soft, still inside. You built something from pain. You called it music. You called it war. But what you built was a mirror. I stared into the black. Was it the whistle gun? Was it the fracture? Was it me? Riva interrupted my spiral. Come see this, she said, sitting up at the observation console. I walked over. And my heart stopped. There were stars again, but they weren't blinking. They were arranged, deliberately, shaped like a waveform, not natural, not chance, designed, a message. Riva's hands trembled as she scanned it, ran it through a frequency decoder, ran it through linguistic overlays. She muttered under her breath. This isn't a language, it's a response. To what? I asked. She looked up at me. To the gun's scream. The message was short. 5 pulses, 5 tones. Translated across dozens of models, it meant the same thing. We heard you. We let you speak. Now listen. I laughed, not because it was funny, because I realized we weren't silencing anything. We were being allowed to make noise. We'd thrown our scream into the void like a child throwing a tantrum, and the void had leaned down, smiled faintly, and said, "All right. Now it's our turn." That night, the Duchess began to hum. Not loud, not angry, but familiar. Like something buried deep in its bones remembered being a ship again. Not a weapon, not a cathedral, just a vessel. The pipes didn't bleed. The steam didn't hiss. The hull didn't vibrate with screams. Instead, a single warm tone echoed through the frame. Like the universe exhaling. We found a backup nav route in the logs. One final coordinate marked last known anchor. It wasn't Earth, but it was human. A listening post buried on the edge of charted space, offline for years, abandoned, but intact. We agreed. That was our destination. If anything was left of humanity, they'd want to know what we did, what we built, what we broke, what hurt us, and what might still be singing back. As we powered up emergency thrusters, I sat by the window, watching the waveform stars fade behind us. And for a moment, I thought I heard it again. A single note. Not metal, not steam, not war. Just music. The listening post was dead before we got there. Drifting quietly at the edge of a blue dwarf's weak gravity, its solar panels tilted just slightly off angle, like a broken arm that never quite healed. No lights, no comms, no heat, just a hollow metal shell in the shape of what humanity used to call hope. But it was still there, and in this new galaxy, one rewritten by scream and silence, survival itself felt like a miracle. We docked the Duchess for the last time. Her systems were running on fumes, barely enough pressure to push out a sigh, let alone another jump. The lights flickered dim yellow across her halls, and the metal didn't hum anymore. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't angry. She was tired. I stepped onto the airlock bridge and turned back. Riva stood in the doorway, one hand on the wall. She didn't say goodbye. She just whispered, "Thank you." And for a second, I swear, I heard the ship whisper back. The listening post's interior smelled like rust and frozen air. We had to manually pry open the pressure seals. Old systems hissed awake when we forced our way in. Dust floated like ghosts. Screens blinked blue. The air scrubbers, ancient but sturdy, wheezed back into life. We were home. Not Earth, not really, but human-made, which felt close enough. We set up in the command bay. It overlooked a broad expanse of dark space. No stars, no nebulae. Just void. Perfect for listening. Perfect for waiting. The first few days were routine. We ran diagnostics, rebooted subsystems, repaired a cracked antennae. Ate the last of the Duchess's ration packs and tried to forget the taste of brass-scented air. There was no signal, no screams, no replies. Just quiet. Riva kept herself busy parsing old logs, clipping data from the Duchess, trying to salvage what we could from her black box before it dissolved entirely into corrupted memory. She didn't talk much. Neither did I. We were both afraid to ask the same question. Had we done the right thing? One night, if you could call it that, I sat in the comms seat watching the frequency monitor. The screen pulsed with emptiness. I leaned back, tired. My fingers tapped absently on the console. And then I heard it. A hum. So soft, so faint, I thought it was my heartbeat at first. But it was external. Real. I checked the waveform. It was a song. Riva ran in seconds later, as if the sound had pulled her from sleep. She didn't ask what it was. She just said, "It's them!" The signal was weak. Not the same as the reply we'd heard from the fracture. Not angry, not godlike. It was human, a voice, female, old, tired, and familiar. "This is listening post Echo 7-1. If you're hearing this, you're not alone." Static followed, then silence. Then again, "This is listening post Echo 7-1. If you're hearing this..." The message looped. Riva grabbed the logs, ran it through a filter, and found the timestamp. The broadcast was over 150 years old. The post had been sending it non-stop, into the dark, into nothing, hoping, praying someone would hear. And somehow we had. It was Earth's last signal, sent long after the war, long after the gun. We never knew what happened back home. We'd been too far, too isolated, too deep in fringe space when everything fell apart. But this was proof. They'd survived, at least for a while. We sat there, playing it over and over, the same voice, the same quiet strength. "If you're hearing this, you're not alone." Eventually, Riva stood. She looked at the empty frequency slot next to the broadcast, and then she did something brave. She hit record. Her voice cracked at first, but she straightened. "This is Riva Mercer of the Vagrant Duchess." She paused. "We're survivors, human. We've just come out of the Krython drift. If anyone is out there, know this: the scream is ended." She looked at me, then back at the mic. "But we remember it." I sat beside her, took the mic. "This is Lieutenant Kellen Vore, also of the Duchess. We were part of the whistle gun deployment fleet. We witnessed the weapon evolve, and what it became." I hesitated, then said it out loud. "We fired a song that rewrote reality, and something answered." Riva leaned in again. "But we're still here." She smiled faintly. "And the universe hasn't deleted us yet." We played the message on loop. We sent it every hour, into the stars, into the black, into whatever comes next. Time passed. We don't know how long. We stopped counting rotations. Sometimes I dreamed of the gun again, of the brass throne, of the scream. But not in fear, in memory. Because for all the horror, for all the blood and madness, we made something new. It may have been stupid. It may have nearly killed us. But it was ours. Then, one day, a signal came back. Not from Earth, not from any colony, from a ship. Old human tech, broadcasting on an obsolete channel. We ran to the console, decoded the burst. The screen flickered, and a face appeared, weathered, scarred, smiling, human. "We heard you." I sat back. I don't remember what I said. I think I laughed, or cried, or both. Riva stood frozen, her hand trembling against the panel. The voice spoke again. "You're not alone." And just like that, we weren't. The universe didn't erase us. It didn't silence us. It heard us, it changed, and it let us change with it. Maybe that's all survival really is. Not silence, not peace, but being loud enough to be remembered, even if all you ever had was a stupid weapon and the guts to scream with it.